Cigar Snapshot, Episode 8. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Cigar Snapshot podcast, a different cigar podcast with episodes made to fit into your busy schedule. Now heard across the United States and in 15 countries around the world. You can find us online at www.cigarsnapshot.com. Bill Bear is here once again to tell you what I think about a cigar. And today's episode will feature a snapshot of the Illuminati Crusade Torpedo. This episode of the Cigar Snapshot podcast is brought to you by the Cigar Snapshot Advertising Department. With a variety of website ads and episode sponsorship options available, the Cigar Snapshot podcast is an ideal place to get your product or service exposed to cigar enthusiasts worldwide. Send an email now to sales@cigarsnapshot.com if you're interested in partnering with a new and innovative cigar podcast. Now I'd like to talk about some listener feedback that I received from last week's episode where I reviewed the Diplomáticos No. 2. The first message I got was from Jimmy, who left a comment on the episode. Jimmy said that the first Diplomáticos No. 2 that he smoked was fresh and a little bit harsh, and he really kind of thought it was bitter. And he figured, like most Cuban cigars, it would need some rest before it was ready to smoke. Well, he let some others sit, and after about 14 months or so, he went back to it and really liked the flavors that the cigar produced, especially that last third. And he's really of the opinion that age did a lot for that cigar. And Jimmy, I agree with you on that. I think age does them wonders. So, I also received a couple of voicemails. So first, let's hear what John thought of the Diplomáticos No. 2. Take it away, John.
Hi, Bill. This is Cigar John here. Just finished listening to episode number 7, Diplomáticos. Beautiful cigar. I was sad to see the Petit Corona be discontinued. Had a little bit more spice in the profile, in my personal opinion, with a smaller ring gauge size. But the number 2 is definitely a ballpark winner there. I prefer it over the Monte Cristo. Not that I have a lot of experience with Monte Cristos. However, the dips are close to my heart. I do have a question that I'd like to hear an answer on. What's your preference or preferred methods of lighting and cutting your cigars? Do you like the soft flame, or do you prefer a torch? Do you like the punch, the guillotine, or the V-cut, etc.? Would love to hear your answers on the next episode. Hope all is well. Love the Cigar Snapshot, and keep on giving us great reviews. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks so much for the voicemail, John. And to answer your question about cutting and lighting, typically my go-to cutter is a straight guillotine cut with either my Palio or one of my Zicars, in that order, and I rarely go beyond the two. I find that the straight cut, when properly used, works the best for me. I just basically use the cutter and I shave off the thin layer of tobacco covering the head, and it works out great. It's usually about a 32nd of an inch or so that I cut off, and in my experience, this works out perfectly a majority of the time. And I gotta tell you, I cringe when I see people using these cutters to lop off an eighth of an inch or more off the head of the cigar, like it was some useless appendage or something. So that's my take on that. Next, let's hear from my good friend Sergio of Churros y Puros.
Hey, Bill, this is Sergio1 from Churros y Puros, one half of Churros y Puros. And I just wanted to say thanks for the awesome review. It was awesome to hear people actually talking about the Dip No. 2. That's a cigar nobody really talks about or reviews. I guess it's better for my benefit because I love those cigars and they don't get that much attention. But I hope they don't get discontinued like you were talking about, man. They are something that every cigar smoker has to try. So once again, I just wanted to say thank you for the awesome reviews. You've been doing a great job. And wow, man, you got a podcast. That is sick. So keep them coming. Cigar Snapshots. Churros y Puros. Check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/Jeebus272. Video cigar reviews. And just a bunch of kids farting around on video. Not literally, though.
Sometimes.
So, deuces.
Thanks for the kind words, Sergio, and for your thoughts about the Diplomáticos. For those of you that don't know Churros y Puros, They were among the first video cigar reviewers to post on YouTube regularly. They started over 3 years ago, and though college life and life in general actually has kind of made their production schedule a little irregular now, when Sergio and Jebus get together, you can usually depend on some kind of mayhem ensuing. So be sure to check them out at youtube.com/Jebus272. That's JEBUS 272. And let me add a special shout out to my new international listeners. I have listeners in Austria, Romania, the Russian Federation, and in Ecuador. Also remember that I do want to hear from you. You can check out www.cigarsnapshot.com. You can send emails and audio feedback files to feedback@cigarsnapshot.com. You can check out facebook.com/cigarsnapshot. Also on Twitter, @cigarsnapshot for show updates, or @maytagman1 for my personal Twitter feed. Also, please subscribe and rate us on our iTunes. That really helps us out. And don't forget, we have a voicemail feedback line. Give me a call, leave me a message at 209-432-3535. And now let's get to smoking this cigar. The cigar I picked out today was an Illuminati Crusade Torpedo. The size is 6.5 by 52 ring gauge. The wrapper is Ecuador Habano. The binder and filler are both from Nicaragua. Now, brand owner Jack Sanzeri started Illuminati Cigars in February of 2010. The term Illuminati is Latin for enlightened ones, and is often associated with a secret society of the rich and powerful, whose goal it is to create a new world order and rule the world. Well, here's a quote from IlluminatiCigars.com about the history of the brand. Quote, "The name Illuminati came from my oldest son, Oscar. He has always been fascinated by the name and movies like Angels and Demons. My second home is the World Famous Cigar Bar located in Fort Myers, where Rocky Patel is a regular customer as well. I became friends with Rocky Patel, and I started discussing with him about blending cigars and having them made in his new factory in Nicaragua. We reached an agreement, and the rest is, as they say, history." Well, Jack was a generous supporter of Doc's 5th annual Central Coast Herf this past June, and sent us Illuminati cigars to sample. The cigar I'm reviewing today is one of those samples, and be sure to check out stogiefresh.com to read all about this monumental Herf, and many thanks to Jack for the sample. Looking at pre-light, the cigar had a nice medium dark wrapper with no major veins or defects at all. The cap appeared to be somewhat hastily applied. It looked just a little bit sloppy in its application. The cigar seemed to be well packed, and there were no hard or soft spots I could detect as I ran my fingers along it. In the aroma, I picked up the strong scent of a toasted walnut-like bitterness, along with a pretty robust hardwood aroma. The pre-light taste was dominated by some aromatic straight tobacco flavors, and there's also a distinct mintiness in the profile at this point as well. The draw was absolutely perfect with just the right amount of resistance. The cigar started off surprisingly mild and unassuming after I lit it. I got a little bit of the toasted walnut-like bitterness, and this wasn't a bad type of bitterness. It was actually a complement to the wet leather flavor that I also found in this first third. There was a touch of spice on the wrapper, and this gave the initial third of the cigar a little bit of character that made it much more interesting than it would have been without it. The ash was medium gray and just a little bit flaky, and it held for, about a quarter of an inch or so before it would fall. As the cigar moved from the first to the second third, the spicy notes in the flavor profile ramped up pretty quickly. The spiciness increased, and I found that a deep woodsiness developed. The leathery notes from the first third fell into the background, and the cigar became a solid medium body as the second third progressed. The profile was still relatively straightforward, and the finish was short enough that I was not able to detect any lingering flavor notes. The retrohale was an unassuming blend of cedar and leather. In the final third, the spiciness became a little bit more subtle, and at the same time, those woody flavors became fuller and richer throughout my whole palate. The flavors intensified, and the cigar started to heat up to the point where I actually had to pitch it a little bit prematurely. Now, the fullness that I was experiencing was nice. in that it didn't have the typical sharpness of pepper that seems to be all the rage nowadays. It was more of like an overall subtle sensation of fullness that I could feel even after exhaling the smoke. Overall, I'd say this wasn't a bad showing at all from Illuminati Cigars. There are some nice, deep, woody flavors that really shined. My only complaint was that I wish I could have experienced a little more of that last third to see how it developed and finished. The heating up caused a little bit of sourness and bitterness, and that kind of took over what up to that point was a pretty decent flavor profile. Now, there are two other lines in the Illuminati brand. There's a milder-bodied Mondo Nuevo and the fuller-bodied Shield. If you liked how the Crusade sounded, you should check those out as well. Thanks again go to Jack from Illuminati Cigars for the samples. We really appreciate it.
Crush and Roll West 2011 is this weekend. I'm Ken Anthony Moniz with the latest cigar news on the Cigar Station. Well, for the third year in a row, cigar connoisseurs and wine enthusiasts will gather in Paso Robles for the Central California Coast premier festival, Crush and Roll West. This celebration of premium cigars, premium wine, and the good life takes place this Friday and Saturday in the heart of the Central Coast wine country. In addition to sampling world-class cigars and wines, attendees will learn the finer points of both from expert vintners, cigar manufacturers, and invited celebrity guests. This year, both the Friday evening and Saturday events will be held at the Paso Robles Events Center, which is home to hundreds of events throughout the year, including the yearly California Mid-State Fair. Activities will include complimentary premium cigar and wine tasting, cigar rolling demonstrations, seminars, raffles, auctions, a poker tournament, and music from the Cigar Station. This year's Crush and Roll is benefiting two outstanding organizations, Project Mañana International and Cigar Rights of America. Project Mañana International is a non-profit humanitarian organization working in the Dominican Republic and dedicated to bettering the lives of impoverished children, their families, and communities through nutrition, education, and guidance. Cigar Rights of America was founded on the principle of fighting for the freedom to enjoy cigars. CRA is a consumer-based non-profit public advocacy organization that works at the local, state, and federal level of government to protect the freedoms of cigar enthusiasts. So don't miss it. Crush and Roll West 2011, this weekend on the beautiful California Central Coast. That's the latest cigar news, but there's more on our website. I'm Ken Anthony Moniz for the Cigar Station at thecigarstation.com.
Now, if there's any way that any of you at all can make it out to Crush and Roll West this year, you have to do it. For information and tickets, check out www.crushandrollwest.com or give Christina Fontecchio of the Boss Cigars a call at 805-474-1133. Now, on to some new business. Well, there hasn't really been anything earth-shattering that's gone on in the past week or so. The only real news that's come about of late has been the fact that Jose Blanco has joined forces with Joya de Nicaragua. But that's already been talked about quite a bit, and I don't want to beat a dead horse about it, so suffice it to say that I'm excited to see what Jose Blanco's finesse can do with the Joya de Nicaragua cigars. As I start to come to the end of episode 8, I just wanted to thank all of you again for listening and for your continued feedback and participation in the show. Your support means a lot. I am planning a little contest that will be announced in episode 10, and you may be able to win a few cigars that either have been reviewed or will be reviewed on a future episode. So keep listening. Thanks again to the Cigar Snapshot Advertising Department for sponsoring this episode of the Cigar Snapshot podcast. Remember to send an email to sales@cigarsnapshot.com for more information. And thanks again to Jack and Illuminati Cigars for the cigar that I reviewed this episode. And I think that'll just about do it for another episode of the Cigar Snapshot podcast. Thanks for listening, and please share your feedback with me via comment, email, or voicemail. And remember, if you've smoked an Illuminati cigar from any of their lines, I'd love to hear what you thought of it. I'll catch you next time, and remember, quality and quantity are not the same thing. If you don't go to a large multinational hamburger chain to get a gourmet burger, why would you think that you can get gourmet coffee from a large multinational corporate coffee shop? I'm just saying. Okay, I'll catch you guys next time. I'm out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Cigar Snapshot podcast. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or compliments, I'd like to hear from you. Leave a comment at cigarsnapshot.com. Send an email to feedback@cigarsnapshot.com. Check us out on facebook.com/Cigar Snapshot. Like us and leave a comment. Or call and leave your comment on the Cigar Snapshot voicemail feedback line at 209-432-3535.